My name is Santosh. I'm the CEO of Umagine Hydrogen. I'll be moderating this panel. Quick introduction of the panel. Mr. Ravin heads Ador, one of the primary suppliers of power electronics and rectifiers for the electrolyzer industry in India and also globally. Mr. Nagarajan, everyone knows about thyssenkrupp, of course, leading the efforts in India but also globally on electrolyzer front. Mr. Anuj Sharma, taking care of the Waaree's hydrogen business, very active with recent deployments also on the manufacturing front. Mr. Anirudh, Saraswat, CEO, CBO of, co-founder of TrueRE, and they are doing some excellent work on both electrolyzers as well as green methanol. And we have Mr. Chintan Tiwari joining us. So Chintan Tiwari is actually a veteran of hydrogen in India. He's the CEO, he's the managing director of Eastern Electrolyzers, one of the oldest electrolyzer companies in India and having supplied to most of the pilot projects in India. So that's a very quick introduction. So what we'll do today as part of the panel, make it a bit more interactive, right? So we'll have a combination of some audience engagement, some rapid fires and some questions to our panels. So the first question is what I want to ask to the panel. So we have a target of about 5 gigawatt per year electrolyzer manufacturing. So how many of you think we can achieve that by 2027? So a raise of hands, please. 5 gigawatt electrolyzer manufacturing target by end of 2027. What do you think? Whoever thinks yes, please raise your hands. 2 gigawatt? Any takers for 2 gigawatt? Any takers for 1 gigawatt? Okay, so we have about 2 gigawatt as an average, so that's good. So that kind of sets the scene of the panel. So my first rapid fire to my panel would be, so from each of one, right, again, same question, but by 2027, what do you think will be the electrolyzer deployment, not manufacturing capacity, by 2027 and by 2030 in terms of gigawatts? If you could, each of you could give 2 numbers, that would be great to get started. Chintan, sir.
I come from a different angle, and I would say that let's talk about tomorrow. You know, we'll see what happens in 2027 and 2030. We always draw these graphs and things and with no idea as to whether this will be achieved or not. The honest answer as how much can be achieved, I have no idea. But I do know that if there is a market, there will be people like me who will be trying to actually supply that. So my thing is that if you ask me what's going to happen 2 days from now, I probably know better.
So what would it be 2 days from now, or this year, end of this year, according to you?
By the end of this year, I mean, again, as a manufacturer, I just know my universe, and it's not necessarily as to what's happening all over India. I'm too small a guy to know all that. But sure. If I were to say as to what we will be doing, we could easily do, about 10, 15 megawatt without a problem, or maybe 30 megawatt, but that's what I would say.
Got it. Okay. Anirudh, your view on this?
Yeah, so history repeats itself, right? Same question we have answered a decade back about solar. The prices was like 16 rupees per unit. Everyone was like, no, 8 rupees is the price for electricity. Gray, green doesn't matter, right? So same question repeated again after a decade for hydrogen industry, and everybody has seen whatever happened in the solar industry. Yes, challenges are there. So my guess is somewhere around 1.5 to 2 gigawatt.
By
and 2030, somewhere around 6 to 7 gigawatt easily.
Thanks. Anuj, your views?
Looks like, Santosh, you are hell-bent on creating some good excitement, and I certainly want to add to it. I do believe that with all the projects which are ongoing at this point of time, be it from the refineries, be it from SECI, which is aggregating the demand for the ammonia sector, some of the private projects which are coming up, by 2027, 2 gigawatt or plus of that certainly looks quite a big possibility. And I think post that, it should accelerate further as well. So 2030 should see significantly higher numbers.
Wonderful.
Thanks,
Anuj. Sir.
No, I will start saying that, it's a bit hazardous to guess at this point of time, but I would say that all depends on the demand aggregation, and the first demand is from what SECI is going to announce. Okay, I think that will be the massive trigger in the market. Maybe in the next conference, all of us can say that numbers with a bit of certainty. I will say that.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thanks,
From my perspective, we make power sources for electrolyzers, so we're right at the micro end. So I kind of agree with Chintanji when he said you can only look at your own universe. And also in our management philosophy, we believe the only thing you can control is the next quarter, and everything else is a wild ass guess. So when I look at what we are bidding on and what we've got on our management reviews, it's about a few hundred megawatts of projects that are going to be decided this year. That itself is maybe 20x of last year. So if I were to extrapolate from that, then you're kind of landing at a 2 gigawatt
Similar
number in 2027.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for your rapid fire answers. So this panel I'm dividing into 3 sections, right? The first one we'll talk a little bit about challenges on the market or the deployment side. Then we will move on to specifically on the manufacturing and supply chain. And the third part would be mostly on the policy and the economic side, right? So, and we already touched upon some of the market questions. So the first question which I want to ask to Mr. Nagarajan, thyssenkrupp globally, right, I mean, reported 95% drop in sales of electrolyzers, right, or order book over last year, which is a significant drop for a player like thyssenkrupp. So how significant do you see is demand uncertainty, and is that really holding back your manufacturing investments, or are projects such as NEOM and some of the projects in India actually supporting and helping you with the long-term strategy?
My first is call me Vaidya because that's easier, everyone understands me. Answering back to that question, like Dr. Christoph who mentioned that we are executing NEOM and we are doing other projects. Okay, so do not go by this quarter to quarter estimations, because that could be misleading. Of course, there is a global demand which is coming down, and that is visible across everyone there. But overall, if you see, there is we were just talking about that, there is a pause in the market, but then market is again going to grow. Coming back to thyssenkrupp Nucera, I will only talk about Nucera here, is that we have an asset light model, so we know what we are doing there, and we are carefully estimating the markets what we do there. For Nucera India, most of you know that, but I will reiterate, we started in India in October 2023. Okay, so what we have done in the last 1.5 years is to enhance our engineering skills. We got from Ude. It's not like Nucera started 1.5. This 50 years expertise of chloralkali from Ude, is translating into that. So our engineering team is currently doing a product development globally with our scale-up modules and things. So we are helping on that. On the India side, we are enhancing the supply chain resilience. I think that is key in the market. So product from India is going, for NEOM and all. So that will help us to strengthen, the market competencies in terms of supply chain, which will be the key going forward, to the manufacturing. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Nagarajan. So my next question will be to Mr. Anuj. So again, a question on similar lines with respect to, let's say, I mean, there has been announcements done by Waaree on electrolyzer manufacturing capacity added up. What kind of customer requirements are you seeing there, and what are the kind of bottlenecks you are looking at as you kind of slowly ramp up your production capacity from nameplate to actual?
Sure. Thanks, Santosh. So I think from a demand perspective, few things obviously are in public domain. Whatever are the government tenders, those are there. But we are also seeing a good positive development. At least we are seeing now, even from some of the other industry segments. Be it steel, be it some of the chemical space, downstream steel mills as well. We are seeing a good amount of traction happening. It's taking a little longer time than what we would have thought, because obviously customers also are going through a good screening process. But I would say there are good positive developments which are happening, and at least from Waaree's end, what we are trying to do is, it's not just about being just selling an electrolyzer. It's about providing a solution to them, working with them in terms of the entire variability of the renewable energy piece, providing them solutions for the battery energy storage systems, doing right kind of a sizing for the electrolyzers so that we can really optimize the levelized cost of hydrogen to them. And I think this is really what the customers are also looking for. It's not just about, you know, getting a RFQ for electrolyzer and just trying to push a product, but it's really about the solution selling and being with the customer in the complete journey.
Got it. Thank you very much, Mr. Anuj. So Anirudh, question to you on, of course, we know that TrueRE is very much active also on the biofuels, on the methanol space. So from an electrolyzer perspective, I mean, are you seeing majority of your demand going into your own captive methanol production, or are you also looking at selling the electrolyzers as a manufacturer?
Yeah, as a TrueRE is our brand name, we are a company called Oriana Power Limited. So yes, we are into EPC, we are into IPP or solar power plants. We are also in battery energy storage system. Recently, we have won around 300 megawatt hour of battery energy storage system. We are also working on CBG as well, and yes, 2 projects are under construction of 21 tons each production, and there are few more in pipeline. So we are in complete value chain of this ecosystem. Now, that first capacity from our gigafactory will be for our own use, because we also understand that, see, on the development side, FID is not happening for the developers. It's a reality. Second, government tenders extending by not 1 month, 2 months, 4 years, right? So there is problem there as well, because definitely the gray is much cheaper than the green, right? So, but we are coming up with our e-methanol and green methanol plants, so one in UP and one in Kerala. So definitely initial capacity of our gigawatt factory will be there only. And we are not coming up with just for electrolyzer production, we are coming up with the BOV plants, because we know that it should be tested not in the field, in the factory itself, right?
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Anirudh. So my next question will be to Mr. Chintan. So you've been selling electrolyzers for a very long time in India and globally. From a market perspective, what's your current focus area? Is it India? Is it global? What kind of bottlenecks are you facing specifically in the Indian market?
Well, the biggest bottleneck, we've always provided a solution. I mean, nobody has ever just bought an electrolyzer from us. It has to do with the whole shooting match. And of course, like Anuj said, that you try and engage with the customer for the entire solution as to what he actually needs and how to balance out as how big the electrolyzer should be compared to the storage and so on and so forth. But on the other question that you had of what problems, I think if I understood you right.
That's right.
That we face on the marketing side, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah, most of the problems are created within India by Indians, okay? It's not something that is coming from outside. Let's say, for example, you want to put up, we put up somewhere where you go at 500 bar pressure, okay? Try getting a peso clearance for individual items. It's almost well nigh impossible. And you're talking about the Rolls Royces of the industry, okay? They want this, they want that. And the companies that we are buying from, you know, whether they be storage systems or whether there'll be dispensers or this, that, and the other, even though they have sold in 99 countries of the world, it takes years and years for getting peso clearances. Now, the government may be saying anything, you know, they are supporting small scale MSME, this, that, and the other. I don't buy that. I'll just take it that with a pinch of salt, really. They can do a far better job, I think. I know that our minister, Mr. Gadkari, made a statement, I do remember, and it was, I think, for ethanol or something, where he said that, where he asked the people who were actually certifying this ethanol, and they said that it'll take them 5 years to do the certification. He said, 5 years I want to change over to, from petrol to ethanol. So where is the sink here? Unless they find a sink, And they say, okay, if the product is being sold in Germany and in the USA and it's certified here, there, and the other, then we'll accept that certification. I accept the certification from somebody abroad. But it's not happening. So I'm not going to, I know that this is short, so I'll just say that that's one of the problems, and there are many more similar. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chandran. Specifically, you have a very long view on this, considering on the market for a very long time. So my question on market to Mr. Ador, to you, sir, would be, let's say, from a power electronics perspective and rectifier perspective, what kind of headwinds are you facing from, let's say, a Chinese supply chain perspective? I mean, is that a big challenge, or considering you already have a very strong presence, you are able to win in this market from a market standpoint?
Yeah, thanks for asking the pink elephant in the room. I just want to spend 2 sentences on the troubles in the market also, right? If in fact this was a settled market, settled business like LNG or diesel, we all wouldn't be here, right? So in an unsettled, immature market, you will have all sorts of problems. And that's the reason it's quite expensive today, right? Today you have stack makers, then you have people who are integrators, you have people who make power sources, then you've got EPCs, and everybody's doing this for the first time, and in India we're also trying to do it at a big scale, and so there will be issues, and we've got to learn along the way, and we've got to be, we've all got to come together as a community to make it happen. Why are the EPCs involved? Because the risk is being transferred. And so what happens? You get something like a demineralized water spec that's been written by the EPC, which is so stringent that the cost of water goes up. You start right there, right? And then there's margins and margins and margins right across. And so when you get to the end, you're nowhere close to the $2 per kg that you want to be at. And then we're trying to find within the system bolts and screws and trying to get the lowest price for all of that. So when we started in 2021, we've been making power sources since 1982, but when we went into the green hydrogen renewable energy power sources, which are more complex than your traditional gray hydrogen power source, we were 30% more expensive than Europe making in India, right? So that was the first reaction. What are you doing? You're more expensive. It took us a long time, many iterations, 4 years in the making today, where today we know that we are competitive against China in India, right? And that's with whatever the government has in terms of protections today. So we know that we've got, for example, 30 kilowatt power sources for SOEC and AEM that are cheaper than China. Our thyristors are, and we were struggling in the IGBT big end, 300 to 600 kilowatt cost range, but even those today are competitive against China. But the supply chain will still be in many ways reliant on China because that power electronics supply chain doesn't exist here. What are the other problems we have? The power electronics competence doesn't exist in India as well. And so, you have to look to Europe for support for power electronics design, or you have to look to China for support for the moment. And I think that's a 4-year cycle, 5-year cycle till India is able to stand up by itself and design to cost, design for the need. And I hope also that the hydrogen industry gets to a standardization. So not every company, every project has a different spec, and we're going right through the process of redesigning everything and then trying to cost it, which makes it actually inefficient.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Mr. Ravin. So that brings me to my second, and actually it's a good segue to the second part, right? And again, I'll come back to the audience. This is on manufacturing, right? So my question first to the audience, and then I'll ask the panels on the same rapid fire mode, is, let's say, what do you think is the current, let's say, indigenization of electrolyzer components, right? So I'll give a number and then you can raise your hands. Is it 60 to 70% in terms of components which could be manufactured in India from an electrolyzer manufacturing perspective? 60 to 70%, show of hands, very few. Is currently 70 to 80%? 80 to 90%? Less than 50%? Interesting, very interesting. So I'll ask the same questions to my panel, right? And I think this is something which we, Mr. Vaidya, we talked about also in a similar panel, right? A number on what is the current indigenization percentage and what is your target?
You saw me lifting for 50, so I'll start with that. And because the components going into that, that's critical there. So that we have to understand. And also I will explain one thing, what Ravi was mentioning. I think there should be a harmonization of procedures. We saw in the morning also that Europe has a different, India has different, and things. First, globally, there should be harmonization of procedures. So having said that, that will drive this, okay? How much is localization? So I will be very conservative on that, not.
So that will be
very bullish on
50%.
that, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Anuj, what's your number?
So Santosh, I would say we have been working on localizing the components for electrolyzers for some time now. And based on the progress, what we have seen working with the various component manufacturers, we feel very confident that actually India can do somewhere in the range of about 80 to 90% already. So the critical things like electrode coatings and all that, the meshes are already available. Coating, certainly there are, I would say the people who have been in the coating industry, they are willing to set up shops in India. So I think it's all about we also reaching out. Membrane certainly is a challenge at this point of time, which we may have to import. But other than that, I would say, by and large, everything can be done locally.
Got it. Anirudh?
So currently 30-40% in next 3-4 years. I think 70% is easily achievable number, because yes, definitely memory is something, yes, we have to do R&D. And definitely the price of Chinese electrolyzers are cheaper. So we can learn from their mistakes. It's easier to learn from other mistakes. It's economical. Yeah.
Sure. Chintanji?
Yeah, I think I would go with Anuj here, and I think, but let me tell you that the electrolyzer, this electrolytic hydrogen universe, is not all 5 megawatt. Okay, we've been selling plants to the thermal power station industry for the last 40 years, and that they're also electrolytic. And 20-30 years back, we had achieved 100% indigenous. So now the electrolyzer is only a little different. The rest of it is all the same, and we all make all the balance of plant as well as anybody else does, I think, in India. So balanced plant could easily be 50% of the total. So 50% indigenization in any case has been achieved. It's only a question of the electrolyzer. That too, if you're talking about alkaline electrolyzers, because I think that's the only way to go into at least the immediate future. We're talking about the alkaline electrolyzer. Again, if you talk about small electrolyzers, yeah, there's some coating here and there and all that, but I mean, it's easily 90% we can achieve there. But when you're talking about the larger electrolyzers, I'll tell you when I get to it. I don't know yet.
Sure. Mr. Vaidya, you had a follow-up.
No, I was going to, he exactly mentioned that. I think we are not talking here of, 0.5, 1 megawatt. I think we have to start, okay. From our experience on the electrolyzers, okay. There are two things we have to look at. That is the safety on that. And then, with the load fluctuating, what type of coating, what is the current density. So there's a lot of factors going into that. It is not as simple as that. So when you look at, the feasible capacities that India is looking, which is 100 plus megawatts, then, are we ready today? The answer is clearly no, right? Are we, looking to do that? Answer is yes.
Got it. Mr. Ravin, I mean, you already touched upon it with respect to power electronics. So, of course, and you touched upon the number as well. But with the semiconductor kind of industry coming up in India, do you see, let's say, 75, 80, 90% kind of numbers in power electronics, or do you see that as a challenge in the medium term as well?
I think in power electronics we're already there.
Okay.
We're already at 80 to 90 because you're only getting the chips and ICs that are coming from China. Will we be successful in India on the semiconductor industry? I'd say, we're 5 on 10 on that. We don't have the scale and we don't have the tech, and we have a long journey to get there. Kudos to the government who want to make it happen, and great, fantastic policies. But by the time our fabs come, the technology might have moved again, and you might be forced anyway to go overseas. But the short answer to your question is, the componentry for most things is already available in India, right? It's only certain unique things, whether it's rare earths, coatings, chemicals that need to come from overseas. That's not the bit that's imported. The bit is the IP to be able to make it. And then once you're making it at scale, if you're making a stack, is it better to buy it from the people who know how to make it, who've done it, who are making it at mega scale, and therefore in a much safer manner? Those are the questions that we have to answer. And at what point will India be able to make those kinds of investments in both intellectual property development and safe manufacturing of a safe design?
Got it. No, wonderful. And I think that kind of also, gets me to my second part, right? On technology, right? And also supply chains. For example, of course, Oriana has a collaboration with a US-based company on electrolyzers. Waaree has been collaborating with certain companies as well. So there is a technology angle. And then Mr. Chandan and Eastern Electrolyzer have been developing technology on their own in the past with collaboration. So happy to hear from all three of you on, let's say, what is the roadmap towards technology, and specifically perhaps addressing Mr. Ravin's question on the IP part and the skills part as well.
Sure. So just want to brief you on what we plan to do on the electrolyzer front. So we are currently in the process of setting up the manufacturing facility, and in the phase 1 we'll be coming up with 300 megawatt capacity and certainly scalable. So here we have already done a technology tie-up with a company who has been in the field for almost about 2 decades, large number of patents on both the design of stack as well as on balance of plant, number of units already operational, and that's the technology we are bringing in, and we will be manufacturing stacks up to about 10 megawatt single stack at our facility in India. And this facility will be up and running in this year itself. So we are currently going through the entire technology transfer process, and we feel very confident. Even in terms of the capex, we will be in a position to meet. I would say even the overseas supplies as well coming in from the neighboring countries as well. Given the kind of ecosystem which exists in India, you talk about steel, at least from a alkaline electrolyzer perspective, steel is one of the components. So you do have, India has got a very large scale steel production. You talk about, the creating the flow channels, utilizing all the CNC cutting machines, milling machines. I think the right kind of skilled manpower is available. You talk about the balance of plant, which is all about the metal fabrication industry, which is quite well developed in India. And there are good, so we are already following the ASME processes, so on and so forth. So from a quality of these pressure vessels, I think we can deliver those. When you talk about the power electronics, I think electrical electronics industry also is very well developed, and so if I look at all of these spaces, I think we can really compete with our neighboring country as well, and we will be in a position to bring really a very cost competitive product, which will also help in achieving the desired levels of levelized cost of hydrogen.
Thanks, Dr. Anuj. Anirudh, your views on technology and supply chain?
Yeah, so need of the hour is deployment, right? You started with that number. It's 1 gigawatt and everybody was laughing. It's only 1 gigawatt and we are doing symposium like this. So we believe in execution, right? So we are coming up with this gigafactory for complete BOP system, and it will be a modularized system. So alkaline electrolyzer will be one of the part of that ecosystem, purification unit and other parts will be in that modular system, and it will get tested in the factory itself. So what is the current problem of the industry? One is time overrun. 1 साल का project है, 2 साल चल रहा है, 3 साल चल रहा है. Then cost overrun. If it's a $10 million project, you never know, it will end up with 12 or 15 or even 16, right? So that's the 2 biggest problem. Time overrun and cost overrun is the biggest problem as of now. So we need to make ecosystem for this thing, right? Ultimately, it's a game of levelized cost of hydrogen, right? Levelized cost of derivatives only. For that, first we need to create ecosystems. So that's what we did, that collaboration with Split Waters in the US. And definitely, as we are coming up with this 225 tons per day plant of methanol and another 2 plants of similar sizes, so 100 megawatt of electrolyzer is there. So it's making an ecosystem about it. Otherwise, after 2 years, if we see each other again, it will not be the same number, right? Ultimately, the deliveries matters. I know ecosystem is difficult, there is no ecosystem for hydrogen, that's why we are going in methanol, because methanol is liquid at room temperature. So we have to make something out of it to drive the ecosystem. It's about driving, that's what Foundry is known for, right? Professionals are known for. So we are here to discuss what are the challenges. Yes, there are lots of challenges. Even supply chain is disturbed, is not there. Delivery is not possible, pipelines are not there, nothing is there. So we have to make something out of it that is feasible on the ground as of now, and most important, making money out of it, right? If we talk about these things, like China has done earlier, now what is happening in China? Overcapacity, massive overcapacity. They are having 5 megawatt of electrolyzer as of now, but the capacity of plant is 3, 4, 5%. It's not good. So let's walk slowly, like an elephant, white elephant in fact, but not as fast, but we have to find the solutions, not the problems. Sorry.
Got it. So, Mr. Chintan, for you on technology, and that has been one of your fascinations for a long time, so happy to hear your thoughts on that.
You know, you cut your suit or according to the cloth. Now, I'm coming from a different, absolutely background. We're trying to create something out of nothing here. I have, first of all, to accelerate this process of manufacturing the electrolyzer, I have no choice but to go to my existing vendors or job workers who do job work, etc. I know what I want. So with my own quality team, with us doing some of the work and doing the assembly, we are trying to get, and with our own technology, we are very cost conscious, because unless if that Chinese guy is going to be dumping at $300 a kilowatt, you have to come up with a solution, right? And you can't do that with, I feel, by buying, technology at millions of dollars and setting up huge factories, etc. From my perspective. So I've got to find a different route, which I am. As far as, testing the entire BOP, etc., we do it as well. But we model. We do it on a computer modeling. It's, I think, that much cheaper and safer to do that. And we have a lot of plants out there in the field which we can see as to how they've been, behaving. And, kind of comes from the school of hard knocks more than anything else. So that's what.
Thank you, Mr. Chintan. So, Mr. Vaidya, just a follow-up question on that. And you mentioned a couple of things that for a larger megawatt, it will be very difficult to kind of indigenize it. And what do you think, how do you think are, let's say, the challenges on the supply chain from a component supply perspective? Is there an opportunity for, let's say, MSMEs to build various components of the electrolyzers, which in your asset light model it fits very well? Or what do you think are the bottlenecks and eventually the opportunities?
No, before going into that, manufacturing, I think the one thing that I have highlighted in the previous, conferences is the product safe, reliable, and is it efficient? I think safety comes first in that. Okay, I think he was mentioning the same thing, that there the experience comes into play. Then the scalability comes if the plants are safe, because what is happening is you are mixing an oxidizer with a fuel in this, so we have to be careful on that. I have worked in different industrial gas, 25 years experience, and I'm only saying that this has to be factored in during manufacturing the design phase, and it has to be harmonized. Okay, across this table, I think there is a greater understanding of that. Then the cost comes the later portions. Okay, if these are India has this competencies, then we can look at that. We have not yet done that due diligence as Nucera India, but from what I hear across this table, there are already enough competencies on that. And then with the smaller scales, we are doing that. And then once it goes to gigawatts, that we are doing as Nucera, then this will come into play.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mathew. So that comes to the third part, I would say the round 3 of the panel, right? And I'll start with the rapid fire. So that's on economics. And Mr. Chintan already mentioned a number. So what I'm looking for specifically from the panel is, yes, thank you. So specifically from the panel is, let's say a USD per kilowatt on the electrolyzers, right? In terms of what do you think is a sustainable target, right? Taking into account, of course, the reliability and the safety and efficiency. It's not about dumping, but what is the realistic number what we are looking at? And specifically looking at, let's say, the morning session from Mr. Vipul, European electrolyzers as at $1,900 per kilowatt, Chinese, which was mentioned at $875, but there are tenders in China talking about $100, $150 per kilowatt. So what is your number? And then perhaps a bit of an explanation behind that as well. That would be great. Mr. Chintan, perhaps you want to start.
Electrolyzer, the stack is at one stage, but the whole solution, as he was talking about, is another thing. With the customer is really looking for the entire solution. So the Chinese may come in at $300. I think it'll be difficult for us to come in at $300, but certainly, if it goes up $375, $400 is feasible at this time. We will try to achieve lower and lower. But then we'll try to bring it more competence in terms of, actually execution of the contract, service availability, but most importantly, everybody wants a system that is, that they design. They'll tell you, I want this valve here, or that valve there, and this thing here. I mean, I've been flogged enough with all this to, take it with I don't really care. I'll give you whatever you want. And I'm not going to charge much for the engineering, but the Chinese can't do that, So you have to find what you are good at and bridge that gap, which is there with the Chinese. And I'll tell you today, we are thinking it's $300. But now with the other markets gone because of the when it comes to these tariffs, you don't know what's coming next. And the big thing that the Indian government can do is look at they've got this possibility of these Chinese coming at these prices. They have to create some kind of protection. They certainly would know as to what an electrolyzer costs. We're not here to gouge in this market, but if they're going to be dumping, we'll have to find a solution.
Thanks. Mr. Anuj, your views on both the cost and perhaps also highlight on some of the policy measures that are already there, but do you think there is something additional which is required?
Sure. So let me start with the cost. While I did talk about, the cost competitiveness of the Indian electrolyzer industry and why we should be in a position to compete. But I also want to come to, so I keep seeing a lot of these comparisons, some $100, some $300, $800, $2,000 and all that. I think in all of this, the most important thing is first to understand the scope. Are we comparing apples to apple? In terms of scope I am talking about, or not? So typically people just see the headlines, some tendering was done and some particular pricing. First and foremost is whatever prices we see in China, not necessarily that, so we understand the scope of those. Second, the electrolyzers which are being sold in China are all as per GB standard and not really as per the ASME requirements or NFPA requirements or whatever are our classifications with respect to the electricals, explosion proof, so on and so forth. So we really need to bring at the same scope level, that's most important thing. Second is, it's not just about the capex of the electrolyzer, but it's also about what's the efficiency of the electrolyzer, because this is certainly going to drive, that's the biggest cost factor I would say, in terms of the energy consumption itself. So one needs to be very, very cautious. And a very typical if you go to a Chinese manufacturer and they will quote a specific power, and this is based on Faraday's law. Okay, it's not a guaranteed efficiency number, and there are reports available, I'm sure publicly available as well, which people can read. There is a big difference between the stated efficiency versus the actual efficiency. Okay, so I think this needs to be kept in mind, as well, when we talk about it. Second thing is all about the life of the electrolyzer stacks as well. Okay, and I think Chintanji raised a great point about the serviceability, because now you are deploying an equipment which is going to be there for about 20 years. Earlier panelists talked about entering into build on operate contracts for about 20 years, 15 years, or signing up offtakes for 15 to 20 years. You also need to ensure that your equipments are able to run for that particular duration, and there is a service available for those electrolyzers. So I think all of these needs to be kept into account and not just look at capex.
Basically, a holistic view on it.
Absolutely.
Mr. Ravin, you wanted to come out.
Yeah, I just wanted to underline, to the points made by both Chintan and Anuj. Yes, the Chinese are cheaper, but we've got to understand why they're cheaper, because they've got an ecosystem that allows them to be cheaper that is not created in India, right? First, they get land and building free from the government. Secondly, their entire R&D teams are 200, 250 people versus 20 or 30 in India, and they are off balance sheet because they're students that need to be employed and paid for by the government. Then they get export incentives. Then the entire system is built around scale. So you have little stack city, and everybody there is buying from the same steel vendor, the same coating vendor, and that guy's got all of this economies of scale that you're just not going to get in India. So on the first step, to expect India to be able to do it at that price is unfair, because we have not created an ecosystem in India to achieve that. Secondly, be fair to the Indian company as well, because Indian companies give you customization, as Chintan has just said. Indian companies give you credit, Chinese companies very rarely do. But we still expect it to match this Chinese price in an ecosystem that is unfair to India. So I think we need a whole of community as well as with government view on, are we going to be like Europe, where, you cannot create a fortress against, dumping from China? Or are we going to be more like America and create some fortresses where technology has to be developed? We can't be sitting half pregnant as we are today.
Thank you.
Just one last point. You asked for inputs on the policy, not really getting into the numbers, but you asked for the policy support. I think the government mandates on use of green hydrogen is something extremely important. That's point number one. Second thing is, I think for the larger projects, we talked about the transmission over CTU, where you have a lot of, all the charges are sort of waived off. Now there has to be also a level playing field for the small and medium scale consumers as well, who are particularly connected onto the state grid. Now when these small and medium scale consumers want to source renewable energy for generating green hydrogen, which they are going to use in their production process, while they are being thumped with huge amount of transmission charges, wheeling charges, demand charges, so on and so forth. And that makes the renewable energy almost double the cost of, the landed cost of renewable energy, almost double versus what it is at the generation place. So, I think these two things, if these can be taken care of, I think India will see a huge, big acceleration in terms of adoption to green hydrogen, even in the small and medium scale consumers as well. And not necessarily, we are only talking about the mega scale, and that will mean that the green hydrogen has been really very, very deeply adopted across the industry segments.
So, any last views from Mr. Vaidya on the policy front, and then we'll close it.
I think we are running out of time, so I'll make it pretty short on that. Is that there, like Anuj and everyone is saying, that there should be a mandate. Once a demand aggregation is coming through mandates, the rest will flow. As simple as it. Yeah. Thanks.
So thank you very much for your it's a great inputs. I think we covered a lot of topics across, let's say, indigenization from a supply chain ecosystem perspective, holistic cost, and of course market challenges.